My name is Katie Paris. I am the founder of Red Wine and Blue. I am here in the Cleveland area of Ohio, and I am just so thrilled to be here with you all tonight. I think for most of us, it's hard to believe that it has been a whole year. It's going to be 1 year on Saturday since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. But what I can believe is all the incredible organizing, action, and support that I have seen from all of you all across this community, nationwide, standing up together to say, hell no, we are not going to take this. We're going to stand up for each other, for our daughters, for our nieces. We're not going down without a fight. And while we are seeing the damage of this decision all across our country, we are also seeing political consequences. Reproductive freedom is 6 for 6 when it comes to those ballot initiatives supporting reproductive rights in our states. Reproductive freedom is drawing women out and those who love us to the polls, and politicians are seeing the consequences of their opposition to our rights and our freedoms. And we all know how personal this is to us. And we believe at Red Wine and Blue that the way that we show this is personal to us and the way that we exercise our power is through connection with one another. So when we get together here like this tonight and so many other places in person or on Zoom or whatever, we believe that it is a powerful act. This is not just dialing in for a Zoom call. It's so much more. Because you know what the other side wants us to do? They want us to just be alone, isolated and alone, and feel like we're all by ourselves and that we don't have a community to turn to, because they know that that's where our power comes from. So tonight you're doing something powerful just by showing up. And we also are going to be hearing powerful stories tonight of other women who have showed up in big ways in their communities for each other and for you, because they believe, like you do, that we deserve to have our rights and freedoms in this country and that we will get them back. So welcome for being here tonight and showing once again how very wrong those pundits on cable television are, that women would somehow forget about Roe v. Wade being overturned and that would be that. How wrong they were and how wrong we show them that they were every single day. And we will continue to as well. All right, everybody. So I don't want to delay any longer. I am so excited to get to sharing women's stories tonight. That is why we are here. That is the best way that we create community together. Now, this woman who we're going to bring up first, many of you all have seen in the headlines. And at Red Wine and Blue, at our team, we thought, we'd love to invite women who have had powerful stories, who have been impacted by the overturn of Roe v. Wade, and how they're using their voices as a consequence. And the first name that so many of us said was, what about that woman in Texas, Amanda Zurawski, who has been standing up to the state of Texas because they denied her, and you saw her testifying before Congress about it in that video, but they denied her access to the abortion that she needed, and it almost killed her, and that was a pregnancy that she so desperately wanted. She's going to come and share with us tonight why she chose to share her story, why she is speaking out. And what I love so much about this is I didn't get connected to Amanda through some, institution or fancy organization. How did we get connected? I DM'd her on Facebook. As we women do everything else, right? We just find each other and we get shit done. So with that, thank you for being a woman who gets shit done, Amanda. Come on up on the screen and talk with me about your story.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super honored and excited to be here. And yes, Katie totally did just slide into my DMs and it was awesome. And I'm so glad that you did, because I am absolutely thrilled to be here. I think this is so cool. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I am really excited for our community to have found you. And I hope that you can feel like the love, virtually being sent from all of us to you tonight, because it is no small thing to do what you're doing and, step out. And, I'm going to guess that this isn't something you've done before in terms of making national headlines with a deeply personal story.
Yeah, no, I've never been in the news before. I've never sued anyone, let alone an entire state. So this has been a wild ride, that's for sure.
Wow. So Amanda, what was the moment that you decided? I mean, I'm sure that it's so relatable, first of all. I mean, I think that I'm 43 now. I first started in my mid 30s, like age 35, trying to get pregnant. I did get pregnant, ended in miscarriage, had a DNC at 10 weeks, was not in the situation you were that led to where you are now. But I just think so many of us, I actually think since the overturn of Roe, I've come to have a new understanding of how every single woman's story is different. And that it just has reinforced even more strongly than I have ever had before the need for women to be able to make their own reproductive decisions. But how did you go from a woman who'd like never sued anybody before and never been in the news to deciding to share your story so publicly?
That's a really great question. It wasn't just one moment, it was kind of a slow burn. So when I was still in the ICU, my husband, Josh, and I were talking about this, and we just kept thinking about, the law in Texas that had just taken effect and how devastating it was going to be for so many people. And we got to thinking, like, we're the best case scenario. We had all of the pieces in place that we could get access to healthcare finally. We have supportive friends and family. We have supportive employers who allowed us to do all the things that we needed to do, take time off, grieve, heal. There are so many people that are going to be and who have been impacted by this who don't have all of the same resources and the same opportunities. And so we were like, we've got to do something. And so even when I was still sick, we knew that we were going to do something. Now, we didn't know it was going to get to the level that it's at now. The way it started actually is my OB connected me with another doctor, and she's like, oh, she's just taking some like anonymous survey where you can kind of share your story, but don't worry, it's just like anonymous via email, no big deal. And I was like, sure, yeah, that sounds good. Well, okay, that very quickly turned into 10 days post-discharge. We had a full film crew in our home that we had moved into, by the way, on the day that I was discharged from the hospital. And so we told our story there, and it just kind of kept growing and growing and blowing up and blowing up. And from the beginning, I'm very fortunate. My husband and I have been on the same page with everything. Pretty much every single opportunity, we're like, yes, we will do it. We will speak up, and we will continue to. And as it's gotten bigger and bigger, we just realize how many people need us to tell this story. And so that's why we keep doing it.
What has been, Amanda, the most surprising part about this experience?
Oh gosh. I mean, all of it has been surprising. I think what I've been surprised the most by, especially as this continues, is how many people have similar stories, but they are afraid to speak up, or they don't want to speak up. And I totally get it. This is not easy. This is not fun. We know that this is having a huge impact, and we know that there are tons of people being affected by the bans and the laws and all of these terrible things that are happening, but so much of it is untold. It's even bigger than we even know, because there's so many people suffering and going through something similar that they don't feel comfortable to speak up. And so again, it's very motivating, but I think even me, as someone who's talking about this all the time, every day I'm surprised at the impact this is having on people.
What has been the hardest part about it, Amanda?
I feel very fortunate to be able to provide a space and a platform for people to come with their stories. But it's really hard. When people message me, I read every single message, by the way. So if any of you message me on Instagram or on Facebook, I will read it. It might take me 3 days to respond, but I'm reading it, I promise. But a lot of times people share their stories with me, and look, everything that I'm doing and that happened to me is rooted in loss and grief. Mm-hmm. And most people's stories include loss and grief and trauma of some sort. And I am in a really good place with my own grief mentally, but a lot of people aren't. And hearing about that makes me really sad for them. But also I understand that's a big piece of why people don't want to speak up. And so even though it's really hard to hear other people's sadness, it's also motivating, because I'm like, I know you're not in a place where you want to advocate or reach out, so I'm going to do it for you because I can and I will.
That's so beautiful. You know, Amanda, I thought you were going to say that, you know, it's people sliding into your DMs that are rude, you know, that are the trolls, you know, like all that stuff. And the it's actually incredible to me that you have the perspective to sort of be like, this is not what's important. What's important is hearing these women and the connection of like, everybody's got to grieve and mourn and experience loss in their own way and their own time. And what a beautiful thing for us to be able to do for each other as women, to, you know what, I can do it right now. Maybe later I won't.
Yep.
You know, like there are going to be times somewhere in the future throughout this experience, right, in your life where you're going to need somebody else to hold the note for you.
Exactly.
And yeah.
Well, and you know what, you know, I was a little worried about the trolls in the beginning. Not that I knew that I was going to be a person that has trolls. Like that's a bizarre sentence to even say, but you know, I used to teach middle school and high school. Like I've got thick skin. There's nothing that some
the perfect preparation.
Yeah, there's nothing that some troll on Twitter can say that's any meaner than a middle school girl. Let me tell you what, like bring it on, Twitter. No, you can't faze me.
It's totally the best preparation possible. Okay, so the flip of that, and maybe these are related questions somehow, but what has brought you some sense of joy, might I even ask, through this experience? Have you been able to find that?
You guys, this community, what people are doing, mobilizing, reaching out, activating, advocating. I mean, it is people like you signing up for a webinar at, you know, 7:30, 6:30, wherever you are, taking your time to listen, people who reach out to me. I have been so amazed at the support and the unity and the community, and it's incredible. And so I thank all of you for showing up, and I thank you, Katie, and your team for putting things like this together. You know, this can be really hard, and it can be very disheartening sometimes when you're trying to talk to your own senators and they won't even sit in the same room as you. But then you've got something like this and you're like, no, you know what? We're pissed off and we are going to unite and we're going to fight back. And it gives me a lot of hope, and it gives me a lot of optimism and a lot of joy.
As you know, we are going to hear the stories of other women from throughout the red, wine, and blue community who have been channeling that rage, maybe that sense of loss, whatever it is, these personal, profoundly personal experiences in terms of what the overturn of Roe has meant in their lives, and have been channeling that into something profound in their own communities. I am going to turn it over now to LaFonda Cousin, who is the new COO at Red, Wine, and Blue, who she's basically like my total like partner in crime here at the organization. And this is the first Red, Wine, and Blue Zoom event that she is basically co-hosting with me tonight. So I'm super excited to hand it over to her. She's going to moderate our next series of women who are going to share their stories. But as we do that, I just want everybody to throw some love towards Amanda in the chat. Let's throw some hearts, let's throw some hugs in all the ways that you all do best. And then LaFonda, I'm going to let you take it over and introduce some more amazing women.
Thanks, Katie. You said first, and that made me a little nervous because I like to stay behind the scenes. That felt like there were more of these coming, so that we'll talk about that later. But hello, everyone. I'm super excited to have joined Red, Wine, and Blue, the Red, Wine, and Blue team. I'm super excited to just be a part of this amazing community of women who are rallying to do incredible things across the country. And I feel really, really grateful to be a part of it every day, to be able to hear stories like Amanda, I'm in Texas. So like, appreciate all of the things that you are doing and, you know, putting yourself out there for the rights and the freedoms of other women in this state and across the country. But my job here tonight is not to talk about me. It's instead to introduce you to some other amazing women who, much like many of you, felt all of the things, but most importantly, felt moved to take action after the overturn of Roe last year. So our first story comes from my colleague here at Red, Wine, and Blue, Jen Perez. Jen lives in Cincinnati, Ohio, and quit her executive job at a large corporation to organize reproductive freedom with Red, Wine, and Blue in Ohio. And Red, Wine, and Blue members in Ohio have just pulled off an absolutely amazing effort collecting signatures to get reproductive freedom on the ballot in Ohio this fall. So Jen, tell us a little bit about how you were motivated by the Dobbs decision.
This time a year ago, I was on a break from a 20-year corporate career. Something just had felt off for me, and I stepped away from the only company I knew, and I was doing soul searching. I was trying to figure out, like, what do I want to do next with my life? So June of 2022, my days consisted of taking my 7-year-old daughter to camp. I might reorganize a kitchen cabinet, just kind of doing the things that you do to keep a household running. And then when the Dobbs decision was handed down, it really shook me. I think, like a lot of us who have personal connections to reproductive health care, I felt all the things, like you said, LaFonda. A lot of people from throughout my life had reached out to me, people I hadn't talked to in a long time. I spent hours on the phone, either talking to people or texting with people, and we were all kind of saying the same thing, like, how can we live in a country that's just going to take our rights away like that? And I think for a lot of us, we were imagining ourselves in scary situations like the one that Amanda found herself in. And it was just frightening, especially in a state like Ohio, where we had a 6-week abortion ban put into place the same day as the Dobbs decision. So after a couple days of kind of rage texting, a good friend of mine said to me, Jen, you need to do something, right? Like, she kind of grabbed me by the shoulders and said, like, put this anger somewhere, do something with it, and she was absolutely right. For me, it was kind of like all the stars had aligned, and it was so obvious that I was in this place of, like, redefining myself and figuring out what I wanted to do next with my life. And here was this opportunity to use skills that I had grown in my previous corporate world and actually make some change in the community that I live in. So I started looking for organizations to volunteer. I was like, I can volunteer, right? I'm going to be someone who is a very active volunteer. I found my way to Red, Wine, and Blue. And what really drew me to this organization was that they really meet you where you are. So I had never done anything political before. And so coming into my first training, it just felt very welcoming. To talk to other volunteers and kind of hear what Red, White, and Blue was all about. Then I found out they were looking for an organizer in my area. So when I talked to Crystal about that role, I remember telling her, I don't think I'm really a good fit for this because I've never done anything political in my life. And Crystal said, that's exactly why you're perfect. So here I am today, kind of coming full circle. I'm leading the small but mighty Team Ohio here for Red, Wine, and Blue. And over the last 3 months, we have trained over 1,100 volunteers to collect signatures to enshrine reproductive freedom in our Ohio Constitution, which has just been super rewarding work to be doing. And I met volunteers daily who told me they had never done anything political before. We had women say, I've never even signed a petition before, and now they're out there talking to their friends, their neighbors, about why this is so important, and the steps it takes, not only by signing a petition, but then voting to get this in our Ohio Constitution. So it's been very rewarding work. And I will say that, like, one of my big learnings has been that activism looks different to everyone. There's not like a one size fits all, like, here we are anointing you an activist, right? For some of us, that means getting out there and collecting 1,000 signatures. Maybe some people are testifying at the state house, but that's not what it looks like for everyone, and that's okay. Every little step that you can take is going to help. And also just understanding that, like, things ebb and flow because life, right? Like, some weeks or months or even years of your life doing activism work is going to feel like too much, and other times it's going to fit perfectly into where you're at. So I think, for everyone out there who maybe was like me a year ago and wasn't doing anything political, wondering like, how can I get into this? Every little bit helps. And the other thing to keep in mind is that even when you're doing something small, the people around you who see you doing that are going to be inspired. So it really has a ripple effect. And by you taking a small step, that might really inspire someone around you to also take a small step. And if we all took tiny little steps, right, we're going to move as a collective. So like I said, it's been very rewarding to be doing this work, to be making an impact, meeting volunteers across the state. And I'm just really happy to be here, but all really just motivated by those rights being taken away from us a year ago.
Thank you, Jen. I think the powerful point there is like collectively, honestly, we can move mountains. And I think there's evidence of that just, you know, with the community of women at Red, Wine and Blue, with Red, Wine and Blue as an organization. So thank you so much. Much like you, I was on the phone, I was having those, I can't believe this conversations on that day. Yeah. I was receiving all of the phone calls. So we are glad you decided to step up and take action and that path led you to Red, Wine and Blue. Our next storyteller is Kelsey Lee. After having an abortion in 2016, Kelsey became involved in the reproductive movement. After the Dobbs decision, she quit her job as a teacher and started working at an abortion clinic in Pittsburgh. Now, Kelsey is planning on running for office in the coming years. Welcome, Kelsey. Tell us a little bit about your story.
My name is Kelsey. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a lifelong Pennsylvanian. I was born and raised near the Pocono Mountains, and I have made my home in Pittsburgh for the last 20 years. Like LaFonda said, I had an abortion in February 2016. And Amanda, so much of what you shared, it really resonated deeply with me. Like I had every privilege. I am a cis het white woman. I was married at the time, lived 10 minutes from great care, you name it. I had it, and it was still the most devastating time of my life to say goodbye to my son at 22 weeks before I ever got to hold him. A month later, Pennsylvania tried to ban abortion at 20 weeks, and I could not be silent. I said then and still say now, I would have a bullhorn on the street if that's what I had, but I was lucky enough to be connected to awesome activists and welcomed into a community. And I got to tell my story, and we stopped that 20-week ban, at least temporarily, and then continued to chip away at it over the following 2 years. I worked at the school. I went on to work at the school where my son is. I had a firstborn son, healthy pregnancy. But I had been feeling the itch to get out, like feeling like I didn't want to just be an activist and volunteer at night. So I'd started applying and reaching out to my volunteer and activist friends. And then Dobbs happened. We knew it was coming, but that day is still a real gut punch. And I'm feeling it in my body even this week, honestly, as we approach the anniversary. So I quit my job. I started answering phones at the abortion clinic in Pittsburgh. We have two in Pittsburgh. I know we got folks from all over the country here. So Pennsylvania is about 300 miles wide, Philly and Pittsburgh being 300 miles apart. We have two clinics in Pittsburgh, and we have 16 on the other side of the state. And Pittsburgh touches Ohio. So we just heard from Jen about Ohio not having access. My clinic was the closest for 2/3 of Ohio residents until they had access back. I was at work the morning that West Virginia overnight had banned abortion. And our phones were ringing off the hook with people weeping and crying because were supposed to have an appointment that day. And the legislature was, again, trying to sneak things through the middle of the night. In the 6 months I answered phones and shepherded people through those appointments day in and day out were a gift. They were draining, and I am not cut out for that work. So massive shout out to the social workers and the counselors and everyone out there whose gifts are on the one-to-one level, but I was more motivated to work at the macro level. So I'm now in Emerge, which is the program that trains Democratic women to run for office. I'm proud to be in that cohort. It's a program that started 20 years ago in California with now Vice President Kamala Harris. And it's an important lineage. And again, like this community, it's people who are all like, hey, I remember when I started out, come on in, we're building our own network. To hell with the old boys network, to hell with how it's been done. We are paving our path. We're doing it with joy. We're doing it with laughter. We're doing it with baked goods. and we're going to keep each other going. And that have kept me going here in the post-Dobbs world are the small actions. When I was at the clinic, a mom's group would drop off cookies once a month. And let me tell you, we ran to the kitchen when they got there. Or people would drop off postcards. We had patients leave us candy. Different restaurants would drop off a meal once a month for staff. People donated gas cards. So those are the things that keep me going in the post-Dobbs world. Showing up here with 200 of y'all from across the country, it's so great. Seeing people, we're all busy, but finding those ways in your day that maybe you and a group of friends can come together, write thank you cards, collect gas cards, drop off some Starbucks cards. Let me tell you, here in Pittsburgh, where we are the final frontier for access, we are sort of the end of the East Coast, it makes a massive difference. So thanks for filling my cup and thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much for sharing, Kelsey. I know so many other women can relate to the emotion that I saw in you bubbling up even today. And I can say that I am super excited to have you leading advocacy on this work, and super excited to see what comes from you in your venture to potentially run for office and continue driving and making change in the future. Our next speaker is from Michigan. Sarah Williams experienced numerous tragic miscarriages, many resulting in surgical abortions over the past 6 years. After sharing her story with her friends and her community, she realized that she was not alone and found power in telling her story. She used her experiences to help pass Prop 3, the ballot measure that protected reproductive freedom in Michigan. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit more about your story?
Thank you, Kelsey, for being vulnerable and welling up as well, because it's giving me that I'm probably going to do the same exact thing. So, and I know I'm in good hands amongst everybody, but I am a wife, I am a mom. I have currently I have a stepson, I have a foster daughter, and I have 2 adopted children. I met my husband when I was about 35 years old. So it's time to start a family was now, or 2 years ago. That I in total have had about 5 miscarriages. 2 were natural. 3 of those required DNCs. And 1 of those required 2 additional surgeries to remove tissue that was hiding in different crevices of my odd-shaped uterus. It wasn't until I kind of sat down at one of those appointments and I was signing some paperwork that I actually saw the word abortion on my DNC procedure, and it kind of hit me. And I called my mom, who was a nurse, and I'm like, what, really? Like, that's what they code these? Like, I'm not here for an abortion. I'm here for a DNC. And she's like, well, medical coding is different, and this, that, and the other. So this was all kind of like 2015, 16. So, I didn't really think anything about it at that time. 2017, we got pregnant again, anatomy, our 12-week appointment, we got to see the baby. We were excited. And naturally I'm an oversharer. So I was sharing my journey along the way on social media with my friends and family. So everybody was just so thrilled when we finally hit that 12-week mark, and I announced it to everybody. I think it was just on Father's Day that I made the big announcement, and everybody was so excited. But at our anatomy scan, we received just this world's worst news, right? Our son had a fatal fetal anomaly, and he was actually, his organs were all growing on the outside of his body as his abdomen did not close around week 8. So we then, in our fog, kind of were ushered into a maternal fetal medicine specialist office. They gave us even, more news that, his spine was curving. He was, basically going to suffocate himself. We could either continue on with the pregnancy and just, I guess, wait for your son to die, or we could go to the only hospital in the state of Michigan, which was U of M, that was performing abortions at 20 weeks. And again, we only had a specific amount of time to get this done, right? So my husband and I just, again, in a fog, but basically made that decision, right? Like, here I am, I had a choice. So my choice was I could go this way or I could go that way. And when we talked about it, and we just had so many medical professionals holding our hands and telling us, and we did all this research, and there was, no cases of somebody with this anomaly being born alive. We made the decision to terminate. We wanted to sing to him. We wanted to hold him. We were told that, that could happen, like that the termination could happen. I could give birth and I could hold him and spend time with him. And that's exactly what my husband and I wanted. And so we went to the U of M hospital, and that at the time that our appointment happened, his heartbeat, he was no longer living. So we ultimately didn't have to make that choice. We checked in. We had the most awesome care from the nurses at U of M hospital. I just couldn't fathom. I mean, it was just so touching. So as I was going through this, and of course, Trump was elected, and I'm already on fire, right? Because I'm just angry, mad, and I have a lot more to be mad about. I recognize that not everybody has this, and this is on the line, right? The women's ability to just be able to even have a choice in the matter, which was so comforting to me, to be able to make that decision on my own of what I wanted to do, and to have some sense of control in this tragic situation. I had that, and women were at risk of losing that, right? Our bodies, like what was happening in our bodies. So as Dobbs fell, I just became louder and louder and louder, right? Because a lot of people, I realized, didn't recognize that DNCs were abortions. So your abortion statistics, I'm like completely skewed, right? And then I hear from people all the time that say, well, in your case, abortion is okay. Well, in your case, it would be okay to terminate because they weren't going to live anyway. And I say, no. Don't give me the exception. We're all in this together, right? I am the same person as the person who was rape, incest, just starting a career too young, doesn't have the support. It doesn't matter. We're all in this together, and we can't take out some and give to others, right? But again, I just have been open and telling my story, and through telling my story, I got connected with Governor Whitmer, who's just a real baddie, man. I just love our governor, right? So she did some roundtables with people across the state, and I got to tell her my story. And I also got to introduce her when she signed into Prop 3, which was on our ballot this last election, which so many people worked so hard in Ohio, man. I just can't wait. And I really hope you guys have that positive outcome too. And we're all rooting for you. But it's just stories, and people sharing their stories and trying to get rid of the disinformation that I think really helped, because people can say, whether they've had it or not, they can say, I have this friend and this is what happened with her, right? Or this is what I heard from her. And that's more of a personal connection than some, stuff that you're seeing on the internet. So I'm an oversharer.
I'm glad that you decided to share your story with us today. I appreciate your, vulnerability and being willing to not only share your story to those who are likely just like touched by it because they haven't had to experience it or have experienced it, and that really speaks to them. It's touching to them in that way, but just being here and being a part of these conversations in your state and standing in the gaps for women who don't feel like they have a voice in some of these spaces. So thank you so much. Abby Schwaber. Did I get that right, Abby?
Okay.
This past December, Abby turned 60 and decided to hold a fundraiser for her birthday party. She held an auction that raised $1,500 and donated that money to a local organization supporting reproductive rights in Virginia. Please welcome Abby, and we are super excited to hear your story tonight.
I'm someone who's always been politically active. My earliest political memories, I was about 5 years old. I remember marching for the ERA. I remember stuffing envelopes back when you did that and you got lots of paper cuts and stuff. And throughout my life, I've done lots of, never full time. It's always been, volunteering for campaigns on weekends or in evenings, knocking doors. I've done fundraising. I've done a bunch of different things, but it's always been focused on candidates. It's always been focused on who do I want to be in office, who, among other things, supports reproductive rights, but that was never really the focal point. And then Dobbs happened. And I thought, okay, I need to do something specific to this. This is something that is personal to so many women that I know throughout my life. It has been so many women's stories. It is so central and so integral. And it's a fight that I thought was done a long time ago. I didn't think it was something we had to fight about. And so I thought about what I wanted for my birthday, for turning 60. And it occurred to me, there's a bunch of different streams of what's going on right now for women in trying to fight for reproductive rights. There is the work that people like Amanda are doing in lawsuits or legislation in trying to change what the standard is in America and trying to change what the law is. And that's important and critical work. And it's long-term work. It's going to take time to make those changes happen. There's the very immediate work. We've heard some people who are, personally escorts at clinics or who are personally involved in these activities. I live with disability. Neither of those are really options for me. They're not things I'm capable of doing. So the question was, what am I capable of doing? What's within my scope of abilities? And what can someone, also, I live in a very, very red area. I live in Western Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley. And that occurred to me to be part of this whole conversation as well, because I live in an area where abortion services are not readily available. And where right after Dobbs, two of our neighboring states, fairly close to us is the borders of West Virginia and Kentucky, both enacted complete abortion bans, essentially. So this is an area where the problem is not just what is the law, but the problem is women right now who need help, or people who are pregnant, whether they're women or trans people. And I thought, what I can do, I can help somebody. And so for my birthday party, I did a normal birthday party. We got food, we got drinks, we got a cake, we sent out invitations. And on the invitations, it said, during the party, we're going to throw an auction to do fundraising for abortion services. I got in contact with an organization, the Blue Ridge Abortion Fund. They're a particularly great organization. What they do is they actually get women abortions, and not specifically, they don't give them. They help organize the logistics, where to go, setting up appointments, but also help organize, do you need transportation? Do you need accommodation? Do you need childcare? And the big problem is that these things all cost money. At some point for women today, and anybody who's pregnant today who needs an abortion, most of the problems can be solved with money. And so it occurred to me that what I can do is I can try and get some money. And I asked them on the phone, I said, how much does it cost for a basic procedure? Not one of these late-term complicated ones, but what's the average basic? And I said, it's about $500. And I said, okay, I'm going to see how many $500 I can raise. I talked to people at the organization. They offered to send a speaker with swag bags and stuff. So we would have, someone who could talk about specifically the work they do. Had a party, and in the middle of the party, we had a moment where everybody went. I had asked everybody to bring things, donations of things to auction. People brought really lovely things that everybody bid on. Lots of people got lots of really good stuff. And we had someone keep a tally as we were going. And every time we hit another 500, there was a big round of applause because we'd taken care of one more person. And so what I got for myself for my 60th birthday, we just downsized. Our kids have left home. I don't need stuff. I need to know that people in America are getting the help that they need. And so that's what I got for myself for my birthday present.
That is absolutely incredible. Abby, kudos to you for finding your space and using your resources and your network and your time to rally resources for women who need them. That's incredible. Kristen is our next storyteller. So in North Carolina, Kristen Havlick and Janice Robinson are two powerhouses in North Carolina who volunteer as abortion clinic escorts. Janice, we're going to start with Janice. Janice, I know you got trained to do this because you don't want other women to have to go through what you did as a teenager in the 70s. Can you tell us more about the experience of being a clinic escort?
Yeah, thank you, LaFonda, and thank you guys for having me. So I'm 63 years old, and when I was 15, I went through one of those back alley abortions. My mother took me, not by, didn't give me a choice, just, I didn't even know where I was going. I can't remember if she even told me where I was going, but we went to this place, I guess it was a doctor's office, after hours, a nurse was there, and she did this procedure. And so, and I went home, and then basically went through hell, lots of bleeding, and I literally passed out. And my mother did not take me to the emergency room. She basically cared for me at home, and I got through that. So I'm really lucky to be alive. I'm concerned that other women are going to have to go through that, young women. So in learning about, after what happened with Roe, with the Dobbs decision, and the work that we were doing in Red, Wine, and Blue, a lady here in Charlotte, this Black female, I will see her on Facebook, and she started something called the Black Abortion Defense League. And I knew her through some other circles, and I wanted to know just what is the experience like at these abortion clinics. And so I went down one Saturday morning and just observed what was going on. And it was crazy out there with these protesters and so forth. And she was explaining to me about, escorts and so forth, and that her goal was to get more women of color to be volunteer escorts. And so I decided, okay, well, I can do that. So I signed up to go through the training. And so I've been going through the training to be an escort. There's an online training first, and then you have to go for 3 in-person trainings before they allow you to actually begin to work as an escort. And so last Monday, I finished my last in-person training. And so I'll now be signing up, because they need people through the week. I'll be signing up a couple of shifts through the week where I'll be going and actually being an escort out at the clinic. And so I feel like these women, especially because a lot of times these are women of color, Black women, Black young women, and then them seeing a Black woman out there supporting and being there to help support them through this challenging decision is going to be helpful. And so I will be starting my first actual as an escort and outside of the trainee role starting next week. And so now I'm a clinic escort.
That is amazing and really incredible work that you and Kristen are doing as escorts. Kristen, can you share with us, you've been serving as a clinic escort for a while. How have things changed since Dobbs?
Hi, everyone. My name is Kristen Havlick, and I'm not only the social media manager here at Red, Wine, and Blue, but I am an activist and an organizer in another way. I actually am not a clinic escort, and I want to go into depth into what I actually do, because it's a lot of things. First and foremost, I help people get access to abortion. And Abby was actually talking about practical support during her story. And that's what I do. I help give people rides to the clinics that we have here in the Triangle area. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and we have 3 different clinics here in this, actually 4 clinics in this little metro area. And then I help with people that are texting into our hotline. Majority of the people that I've helped in the last almost a year that I have been doing this are not from North Carolina. North Carolina has been a safe haven, as many people know, and unfortunately, in about 10 days, abortion is about to be heavily restricted here. And majority of the people that I care for are past 12 weeks. And that is when our abortion ban is going to be in effect. That means that people are going to have to travel further north to get access to abortion. So we're looking heavily to Virginia. If you want to help us in Virginia in some other way, go to redwine.blue/Virginia. But we are helping people get access to abortion. This is coordinating things like childcare, like lodging, trying to connect them with different abortion funds, because y'all, abortion is expensive. I know that having a child is also expensive, but if you are working class like myself, when I had my abortion, it cost me a whole paycheck that put me in debt. And so we want to make sure that people are able to access that. I've raised over $4,000 for our local abortion fund here, and I'm also an educator. And I've been trying to educate people on what abortion is and the different kind of laws that we've been fighting here, not just abortion laws, but, you know, bodily autonomy also goes to trans rights here in North Carolina, which we've just gone through a whole week of anti-trans legislation. So that's what I've been doing before I got to Red, Wine, and Blue, and what I'm hoping to keep continuing to do even after our abortion ban goes into place.
I just want to echo the sentiments in the chat. North Carolina is very lucky to have both you and Janice doing this work. So thank you both very much. And thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their stories and being open and vulnerable with us tonight. I am going to pass it back to Katie.
Thank you so much, LaFonda, and hey, well done. And thank you to everyone for sharing your incredibly moving stories. I got the chills like more times than I could count, and I've been like taking my notes on everything you guys said. Kelsey, it really resonated with me when you said that you're feeling all this in your body this week. And I think that's important for us to name. And I think that we can all feel that. And I think there's power in us all acknowledging it together, because this work comes from deep inside. I also, Sarah, thank you for acknowledging this, like just rejecting this argument of like, well, in your case, your abortion maybe was okay. I'll make an exception for you. That's been such a profound lesson for me, and hearing all your stories once again, like every case is a unique case. And that is why it must be her own decision. And I also love that you just said, it doesn't matter, we're all in this together. It's just so true. From the inside out. And Jen, I love Jen's mantra about, you know, activism looks different for everyone. At the heart of this, it does come from inside of us. And there is, LaFonda pointed out, the vulnerability at the center of our sharing of our stories. And, you know, Amanda, I was curious to sort of hear from you on that point. Like, what role does vulnerability play for you in sharing your story? I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. She talks about how there is no courage without vulnerability, but sometimes that's an easier line to say than live out and act upon. I think you're doing it, and the other women here tonight are doing it. But can you reflect on that? Do you think about that? Does vulnerability play a role in this journey for you?
Absolutely. I mean, look, I'm not immune to, you know, looking at a selfie of myself or a video of myself or whatever, and worrying about being critical or other people going to be critical. I remember before we shot that very first video, I was so bloated because I had so much water weight from the pregnancy that I had just lost, the procedures I had undergone, the sepsis that was still in my body, the COVID that, by the way, I had gotten in the ICU. Like, I looked terrible. I was 10 days post-discharge during that first video. And I was really worried. I was like, man, I don't know how I'm going to look. I don't know what people are going to say. Are people going to be nasty? And very quickly, it was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because there is a greater picture. Like, I don't even think about that anymore, because it's just not important. I mean, what we're doing and what we're talking about and what we're fighting for is so much more important than any vulnerability. And I remember my cousin early on was like, how are you doing this? You're like on national news talking about your cervix. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that's just what you do. Like, when you're fighting for something this important, it doesn't matter. Like, yeah, you feel vulnerable, but you get over it pretty quick, because you realize the message is so much more important and so much bigger than you or your own.
Yes. More for talking about our cervixes on national television. I'm for that. And more for, you know, I mean, I think, was it Sarah? I think you're talking about your odd shaped uterus, you know? I mean, you know what, girl, it's not odd, it's just you. But, you know, I think just like the more we do normalize these conversations about our own experiences. I remember when I had my first miscarriage, I felt some shame around it. I didn't know about the other miscarriages among, you know, my friends and the women in my family. It needs to be talked about more. And I think that even that is something that we can do to be, to make change and be activists, in the context of our own lives. One thing I do want to ask, and I think lots of you here tonight are sharing your stories, and I think, you mentioned living in red areas. I think sometimes that can be very motivating, because it's like, if not me, then who? What do you experience as a woman from Texas, Amanda, and what, might you share that you've learned on this journey of sort of to women who might feel trepidation about sharing their story, speaking out on these issues, who do live in those more conservative areas where abortion access is in fact most in danger?
Yeah, I totally get it. I was looking through the chat and through some of the comments, and it looks like there's a lot of Midwesterners here, including my own mom from Indiana. Hi, Mom.
Hey, Mom.
Yeah, she's here. She's here from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And it looks like a lot of y'all are from the Midwest or very red conservative areas. And look, I get it. Like, it can be scary. I live in Austin, Texas. It is not conservative. It's very blue, but we live in a very red state. And I understand that it can be very scary to speak up and to have these conversations, but advocacy and activism comes in all shapes and sizes. You do not have to be testifying in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. You do not have to be suing a state. You don't have to be on national news. Like, you can be talking to your neighbor and having a really hard conversation with your neighbor or your uncle or your friend. And that's just as important, maybe even more important, because those are minds that are liable to be changed, right? And those are votes that are liable to change. And I think even if that feels like too much, that's okay. There's so much you can do. I saw people saying that they wrote to, their elected officials in their own states. Amazing. People are donating their time and their money. Also amazing. Writing doctors and abortion providers and providing support to them. Like, they're scared too, and they need help and they need support. And I mean, there's just so much that we can do, and just a tiny chunk at a time, whatever feels comfortable to you, whatever feels right, whatever speaks to your heart and feels authentic, it matters and it's important. And so I just want people to understand that no matter how you're engaging in this fight, it's making waves and it's creating progress. And we need all of us and all of us together, boots on the ground at the highest level, whatever you can do. It's very important. And continuing to talk about it. Like, these spaces are so important, because the other thing that I feel very passionately about is getting rid of the stigma around the word abortion that has been created through politics and taking control of the narrative. Like, I should not have been afraid to have used the word abortion for as long as I was. And I'm ashamed to say it now, but I also recognize that's because that's the stigma that has been created by politicians in this country. And the more we talk about it and speak up and put a face behind the word, the more we take control of the narrative, and they can stop putting us in this box and stigmatizing us and making us feel bad for something that we should not feel bad about.
Thank you for saying all those things, Amanda. That's so powerful. And we are doing that here tonight. We're not just talking about doing that. Just by having these conversations, we are actually doing that. And all of it ripples out from here through the power of exactly what you're describing, Amanda, is that willingness for us to go from here and then have those conversations with the people in our lives that we have those trusted relationships with. That is where real change happens.
And just showing up here might have been hard for some of you. Like, some of you might be here and you might have been nervous to tell your friends or your spouses or your family what you were doing tonight. And so I applaud all of you for showing up. Like, this is a step too. This is important. So thank you. And thank you, Katie and team, for organizing.
Thanks for answering my DM. That's where it all starts. I want to thank everyone for showing up here tonight. We are coming down to our time. Before we do wrap up, I need to ask folks to be throwing links in the chat. Perhaps they already have. I think our Julies are doing that tonight. We have our call to action tonight is to tell us, leaving here tonight, what you are feeling most fired up about. It could be next steps on reproductive rights. We've had trans rights mentioned. We've had a lot of things mentioned here tonight. And there's so many things that are near and dear to our hearts. At Red, Wine, and Blue, we want to be here for you in those next steps, no matter the issue, and have your back. And let this be tonight one step that you have taken, and then fill out this like 3-question survey to help us with you come in alongside you with this community and take a few more steps, or maybe even just one, because that's what we're here for tonight, is to support you in that. And remember that Red, Wine, and Blue women are all across the country. And so this can be on a Zoom call. It can also be showing up in person. We got you, but let us got you. Let us have your back. Okay, so like take 2 seconds, fill out this survey. That is my ask for you. So that's getting dropped in the links. Also, people are dropping additional calls to action if you are in particular states like Ohio that's trying to put reproductive freedom on the ballot. Lots of next steps there, but in every single one of our states, there is accountability, there is direct service to provide support for women no matter where you are. And you can be involved in this. We want to help you do that. So do that right now. It's like 3 questions, you guys. It's like not a big deal. You can do this, and we're going to come right in alongside you. Help us help you do that. And with that, I just again want to thank everyone for showing up here tonight. This filled my cup. I know this gives me fuel to keep on moving. And I have to end on this note. This can feel so hard, and the fact that Roe was overturned can still feel almost surreal and like this nightmare that does unfold in the lives of millions of women across this country every day. But we're winning. Every time this issue has been on the ballot, we are winning. There are consequences. And I believe I believe what John Lewis told us about that arc of history bending towards justice. And we are seeing it on reproductive justice too. This is about justice. This is about our freedom. And this is about our democracy. And we are all here together helping bend that arc. And that is where the arc is headed. And being on this call tonight, that was just one little part of it. So let's all continue to work together in that and have each other's back every step of the way. I'm loving Abby and her glass of white wine, always permissible as well, if that is what it takes to take that next step too. So much love to this entire community tonight. Thanks to all the women who spoke tonight. Amanda, again, a special thanks to you for making time to come. We hope that you always feel at home in the Red, Wine, and Blue community. And the same thing I just want to say to every single person who came here tonight.